Hey, what's going on everybody? Too Long Didn't Read Filmmaker here, where the answers comes first, the reasons come last, but we're constantly and always still learning. Today, we're gonna see how well does the Comica boomX-D Pro with internal recording goes against the Rode Wireless Go 2. You're currently listening to the built-in microphone going into my Sony. Anyways, the TLDR is, if you're gonna be using the built-in mic only and that's it, you're never gonna wire anybody up, I would say spend the extra $30, get the Rode Wireless Go 2, because you're going to get a lot more battery life. In normal use, you're going to see approximately an extra 2.5 hours, but if you have internal recording on, you're going to actually get a little bit more battery life, approximately 3 hours and 45 minutes more than the Comica. So, in my opinion, that $30 is well spent for the extra battery, as well as more features, and, in my opinion, a better audio sound in general. However, if you decide that you're always going to be lobbing somebody up and you're rarely going to use the built-in microphone, then I would say if you're a beginner on a budget looking for your first wireless kit, for $270, the Comica gives you everything to get started. If you do go the Rode route, you're going to look to be spending anywhere from an extra $100 to $200 with other third-party microphones just to get to the same setup, as well as getting the benefits of the battery and extra sound quality. So depending on where you are in your filmmaking journey, those are my recommendations. I would say the Rode probably makes more sense for people that have worked with audio. Maybe if you had some cheap shotgun mics and you understand why you need the better sound quality. Speaking of sound quality, let's listen to some tests real quick. What's going on everybody? You're watching Too Long Didn't Read Filmmaker, where the answers comes first, the reasons come last, but we're constantly and always still learning. What's going on everybody? You're watching Too Long Didn't Read Filmmaker, where the answers comes first, the reasons come last, but we're constantly and always still learning. You done messed up, Aaron! You done messed up, Aaron! What's going on everybody? You're watching Too Long Didn't Read Filmmaker, where the answers comes first, the reasons come last, but we're constantly and always still learning. What's going on everybody? You're watching Too Long Didn't Read Filmmaker, where the answers comes first, the reasons come last, but we're constantly and always still learning. You done messed up, Aaron! You done messed up, Aaron! What's going on everybody? You're watching Too Long Didn't Read Filmmaker, where the answers comes first, the reasons come last, but we're constantly and always still learning. What's going on everybody? You're watching Too Long Didn't Read Filmmaker, where the answers comes first, the reasons come last, but we're constantly and always still learning. You done messed up, Aaron! You done messed up, Aaron! What's going on everybody? You're watching Too Long Didn't Read Filmmaker, where the answers comes first, the reasons come last, but we're constantly and always still learning. What's going on everybody? You're watching Too Long Didn't Read Filmmaker, where the answers comes first, the reasons come last, but we're constantly and always still learning. You done messed up, Aaron! You done messed up, Aaron! Sounds pretty good in general. There is one thing I want to say here. The Comica comes with two different types of cables for your cameras. This orange one is for Sony and Panasonic and Fuji. However, this cable is trash, don't use it. What happens is you lose all the bass frequencies in your voice. I don't know why, and therefore your voice sounds very, very thin. That cable, just don't use it at all. Last but not least, let's talk about the internal recording. It is a WAV file, 16-bit, 48 kilohertz. Each transmitter can hold up to about 12 hours of recording, and when it comes to latency, after I recorded for an entire hour, when I did my claps at an hour to see where the audio spikes were, they were off by maybe 2 milliseconds at most, I think. So really not that bad. It's gonna sync up really nicely if you get into an audio problem with your camera. And the cool way is you don't need a program like the Rode to extract it. When you plug it into your computer, it shows up as a flash drive and you just pull the WAV file forms off of it. That's it. Super simple. Anyways, that is the TLDR. If that's all you needed, cool. I'll see you guys in the next video. Otherwise, stick around for the in-depth reasons and tests, and also you might learn a thing or two. Hello again. Thank you so much for sticking around to watch further into this video. I truly appreciate it for the YouTube algorithm. But anyways, let's just get started right away. So right now you're listening to my Rode VideoMic NTG shotgun mic in a non-sound treated room because I want you guys to hear the difference when I switch over to the built-in microphone of the Comica boomX-D Pro. And boom, you're now listening to the built-in microphone on the Comica boomX-D Pro. Now this kit does come with its own included lavalier mics, so let's see how those sound in this room. And boom, you're now listening to the included lavalier mic that comes with the Comica boomX-D Pro kit. Now, we are going to switch back to the built-in microphone, and that's simply because I'm going to have a second video where I pick a bunch of third-party microphones, plug it into the system to see if it enhances your sound or not. And that video will be linked right up here once it's finished. So let's actually go back to the built-in microphone. All right, here we go. When it comes to this kit, it costs $270. You're going to get the 2 transmitters, 1 receiver. It all comes in a case. You'll get 2 included lavalier mics as well as a nice little wind muff. And you also get 3 different types of audio cables. Now, one of them is for your smartphone, and then 2 of them is for your camera. Now, there's one cable that doesn't really do well with your voice. It's this orange one. And right now, let's switch over to the orange one so you can see what it actually does to my voice. And boom, you're now listening to the attenuated orange mic that is supposedly meant for Sony, Panasonic, and Fuji cameras. As you can tell, it does not do any favors to my voice. The bass frequency is completely gone. So I don't know what's going on here, but needless to say, I think that cable is completely worthless. So let's not use it. Let's go back to the regular black cable. And boom, we're now back to the regular black cable. The last thing is they do give you a charging cable, and it's really awesome because it's one USB type A and it splits out into 3 USB type C, so you don't have to have 3 cables to charge everything. Just one cable will do. One has an orange cable color to it, and basically that one actually can carry data. So if you're on the go and you don't want to carry extra data cables with you when you want to take the internal recording and put it into your computer, just use your charging cable. That orange one will do you just fine. When it comes to feature sets that's built in, it's pretty standard these days. You have your ability to use mono, so if you have one person talking, you'll hear it coming out of both audio channels. If you have 2 people talking, you'll hear both of them coming out of both channels, pretty much like a normal video. The stereo mode, this is the one that for people that want to actually work on people's voices. So one transmitter will be on the left side, one transmitter will be on the right side. So when you go into post, you can actually adjust each person's volume or cut out someone's voice completely if you don't want to hear them at all. And then when you render out, just make sure you dual mono the entire setup, and therefore you have much more control. So that stereo mode is there for people. Last but not least, we do have a safety channel at the output level, which means if for some odd reason I scream, then the other channel is recorded at a lower volume, so you can use that channel to kind of recover. It's not on the microphone level, it's only on the output. So if you clip out the microphone by screaming, you're out of luck. Without a doubt, the internal recording is the standout feature of the Comica boomX-D Pro at this price point. And basically, you have an orange record button on each transmitter. You double click it. With a second click, you have to hold. So tap, hold. That's going to cause the recording to happen. The reason you want to do a tap, hold is because the transmitter kind of goes into a sleep mode. So you have to tap it once to wake it up, and then you hold it to engage the recording. And to disengage it, the exact same thing. Now, technically speaking, if you did press around a couple buttons and the LCD is already like on, then you just have to hold it, but just hear me out, just tap and hold. That's how you want to do it. In terms of the transmitters, they say you can hold approximately 12 hours of recording, which is great. And in terms of the files, they are 16-bit, 48 kilohertz waveform audio files, which is nice. And when it comes to how you actually take it off of the transmitter, you actually just turn on the transmitter, plug it into your computer, and it shows up as a flash drive, and then you can just copy the audio files you want. Very simple compared to the Rode Wireless Go's Rode Central app. This is definitely faster. And last but not least, when it comes to the internal recording's latency, the latency is actually not that bad. I recorded for a straight hour, did some claps, lined up the waveforms to see how much latency did we get. We really didn't get a lot. It was like maybe 1 to 2 milliseconds, and this is actually a little late drift, whereas the Rode, it actually drifts closer, like the audio file actually gets faster. This could just be user error, but anyways, basically they both have approximately 1 to 2 milliseconds of variance after an hour, which is more than good when it comes to audio drifting. Now let's talk about the battery life. Based on my tests, If you're not using the internal recording, the Comica can go for approximately 4 hours and 20 minutes. However, the moment you engage the internal recording, you get a maximum of approximately 3 hours and 10 minutes, which when you compare it to the Rode gets nearly 7 hours if you don't activate the internal recording, and if you do activate the internal recording, whether it's compressed or uncompressed, you only lose about 10 to 15 minutes of battery life. So when it comes to battery management of actually using the system, the Rode has this Comica beat big time. All right, guys, let's get to the meat and potatoes of this comparison, which is how do they sound compared against each other? We have a couple different tests here. I'm going to test it going into a Tascam field recorder, the DR40, but I'm also going to test the internal recordings to see how they handle. We're, of course, going to test the built-in mic, the included lavalier mic coming from the Comica kit, and for the Rode, I'm going to be using the Rode Lavalier Go because that is technically the official mic for the system. So those are the tests. Here we go. What's going on, everybody? You're watching Too Long Didn't Read Filmmaker, where the answers comes first, the reasons come last, but we're constantly and always still learning. What's going on, everybody? You're watching Too Long Didn't Read Filmmaker, where the answers comes first, the reasons come last, but we're constantly and always still learning. What's going on, everybody? You're watching Too Long Didn't Read Filmmaker, where the answers comes first, the reasons come last, but we're constantly and always still learning. What's going on, everybody? You're watching Too Long Didn't Read Filmmaker, where the answers comes first, the reasons come last, but we're constantly and always still learning. You done messed up, Aaron! 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 What's going on, everybody? You're watching Too Long Didn't Read Filmmaker, where the answers comes first, the reasons come last, but we're constantly and always still learning. What's going on, everybody? You're watching Too Long Didn't Read Filmmaker, where the answers comes first, the reasons come last, but we're constantly and always still learning. What's going on, everybody? You're watching Too Long Didn't Read Filmmaker, where the answers comes first, the reasons come last, but we're constantly and always still learning. What's going on, everybody? You're watching Too Long Didn't Read Filmmaker, where the answers comes first, the reasons come last, but we're constantly and always still learning. You done messed up, Aaron! 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 What's going on, everybody? You're watching Too Long Didn't Read Filmmaker, where the answers comes first, the reasons come last, but we're constantly and always still learning. What's going on, everybody? You're watching Too Long Didn't Read Filmmaker, where the answers comes first, the reasons come last, but we're constantly and always still learning. What's going on, everybody? You're watching Too Long Didn't Read Filmmaker, where the answers comes first, the reasons come last, but we're constantly and always still learning. What's going on, everybody? You're watching Too Long Didn't Read Filmmaker, where the answers comes first, the reasons come last, but we're constantly and always still learning. You done messed up, Aaron! 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 What's going on, everybody? You're watching Too Long Didn't Read Filmmaker, where the answers comes first, the reasons come last, but we're constantly and always still learning. What's going on, everybody? You're watching Too Long Didn't Read Filmmaker, where the answers comes first, the reasons come last, but we're constantly and always still learning. What's going on, everybody? You're watching Too Long Didn't Read Filmmaker, where the answers comes first, the reasons come last, but we're constantly and always still learning. What's going on, everybody? You're watching Too Long Didn't Read Filmmaker, where the answers comes first, the reasons come last, but we're constantly and always still learning. You done messed up, Aaron! 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 All right, now let's actually see if there's any difference between the Comica going into my Tascam DR40 versus the internal recording itself. Does the internal preamp do any weird stuff? What's going on, everybody? You're watching Too Long Didn't Read Filmmaker, where the answers comes first, the reasons come last, but we're constantly and always still learning. What's going on, everybody? You're watching Too Long Didn't Read Filmmaker, where the answers comes first, the reasons come last, but we're constantly and always still learning. What's going on, everybody? You're watching Too Long Didn't Read Filmmaker, where the answers comes first, the reasons come last, but we're constantly and always still learning. What's going on, everybody? You're watching Too Long Didn't Read Filmmaker, where the answers comes first, the reasons come last, but we're constantly and always still learning. What's going on, everybody? You're watching Too Long Didn't Read Filmmaker, where the answers comes first, the reasons come last, but we're constantly and always still learning. What's going on, everybody? You're watching Too Long Didn't Read Filmmaker, where the answers comes first, the reasons come last, but we're constantly and always still learning. What's going on, everybody? You're watching Too Long Didn't Read Filmmaker, where the answers comes first, the reasons come last, but we're constantly and always still learning. What's going on, everybody? You're watching Too Long Didn't Read Filmmaker, where the answers comes first, the reasons come last, but we're constantly and always still learning. After listening to that test, the internal preamp actually does a pretty good job. If anything, it kind of gives me a little bit more bass to my voice, just a little bit. That's pretty good. I'm glad to know that the internal recording doesn't sound like trash. Now, there is one thing you need to understand about the internal recording of the Comica though. Its automatic gain control is rather aggressive. It's trying to get the most output and volume as possible. With the built-in mic, it was fine. However, with the included lavalier mic, what I found was it clipped a lot easier. And I don't necessarily know why when you plug in the mic that it does that, but just know if you are counting on the internal recording when you're laved up with the included lavalier mic, you might run into some problems because I wasn't screaming. I was just speaking like normal. Whether or not this actually happens with third-party lavalier mics that I'm going to be testing in this video once it's finished, that remains to be seen. Find out on that video. All right, now let's test out the distance tests when you're outdoors and indoors. If you want to see the raw 10 minutes of me just talking to myself, I'm gonna leave that at the end of the video. This is the TLDR that you need to understand. If you only have one transmitter outdoors in the wide open and you have some Wi-Fi signals from residents that might be around as well as some business buildings, but you're still in a relatively open area, in which case with one transmitter, you only get about less than 10 feet with no line of sight. And that is pretty much par for the course for something like this. If you are within line of sight, you technically can go all the way out to 300 feet and a signal will latch on. But I would say you want to stay within 100 feet. And that's simply because once you pass 100 feet, usually these systems, they start trying to play with their boost signals. And sometimes they might think, oh, we need a high signal. Oh, no, we need a low signal. And when it does that, you might start getting some crackling in your voice, or you might just drop out for a very, very split second. So in my opinion, with one transmitter, that's what I saw in my test results. If you have two transmitters going on at the same time, oddly enough, with no line of sight, I was able to keep my voice within 20 feet. I don't know why, but that's what I got. When it comes to with line of sight, same thing. You technically can get out to 300 feet, but I would stay within 100 feet. But we also have internal recording now, so maybe it doesn't really matter all that much. Last but not least, for the people that are saying, hey, what if I bought two of these systems because I want 4 microphones? Can I put the 2 receivers into a sound bag or what have you and be okay? No, you're not going to be okay, because when I had the receivers next to each other, I had my original boom and then this boomX-D sitting together because they both operate on the same frequency. They fought each other a lot, and one transmitter just didn't turn on at all or catch a signal. So when it comes to a sound bag situation, don't do it. It's not going to do you any favors. The only way that you could potentially get this to work is if your camera is here and then the second camera is like, I don't know, let's say 10 to 20 feet away. If the receivers are far enough, then you might have a chance to get it. But in my general opinion, with these cheap 2.4 gigahertz systems, it's generally just not a good idea to have a bunch of them in the same area. They just seem to fight each other a lot, and there's no way for you to actually control which frequency you want each one to be locked in. So, general rule, just don't do it. When it comes to the indoor obstruction test, I've done this so many times already and the results are always the same. The TLDR is, if you are indoors in a typical house with wooden walls, you can pretty much go upstairs, downstairs, in the next room. You're going to be fine because this is basically a little Wi-Fi router. The moment you walk outside of the house where there might be brick involved, then you're going to get a signal cut. In which point, I don't think a lot of people are shooting in this type of situation where you literally have the sound guy outside of a house or outside of a location. But just know, if for some reason you do have to be in another room and the wall is made out of concrete, you're probably going to have some problems. Otherwise, in a typical situation, you'll be fine. So this next test is the radio interference test. I'm going to be using this cheap Andy Cine shotgun microphone. It is good and it does a great job, but it does pick up 2.4 gigahertz frequencies depending on how well these are shielded out of the output cable. So let's see how well it's shielded out of the output. All right, we are now plugged into this little shotgun microphone. Okay, so that shotgun microphone is not necessarily built to reject it, but this Rode VideoMic NTG is, so let's see how well that does. Okay, so I now have the Comica boomX-D Pro plugged into my Rode VideoMic NTG, so I'm gonna shut up for a little bit and move this closer to the capsule to see what we hear. All right, guys, so what's the bottom line here? How well does the new Comica boomX-D Pro compare against the Rode Wireless Go 2? In my opinion, it actually competes quite well, especially because we now don't have that problem with the original boomX-D where the low cut filter was on by default and you ended up just getting this really thin sound. This sound is actually pretty good. I mean, one could argue maybe it was just because of the original cabling, because this one still kind of gives that sound, but otherwise, I'm actually quite impressed with what we're getting for $270. You've already heard the TLDR, so I'll just recap super quick. If you're only going to be using the built-in mic, just go for the Rode Wireless Go 2. Extra $30 gets you a lot more features, including a significant amount more battery life. Where it gets tricky is for the people that are planning to use the included lavalier mic or just wiring up people in general all the time. This is where I'm gonna have to like really break it down to you. So for the true beginner, I'm talking like you want to learn video, you're going to invest maybe $2,000 to $3,000 on cameras, lights, audio kits, just to get you started and have everything you need. When it comes to someone like that, I would say the Comica makes the most sense because for $270, you get a lot of everything you need and all the basic features that are important for a dual channel system is there. You have the mono ability, you have the stereo split ability, you even have a safety channel at the output level. You have the internal recording should you need it. And yes, the battery life is not all that great, but I do have a solution that I am currently designing and working on, so that video will be up here at some point. But I would say the Comica makes the most sense. However, I do know there's going to be some more advanced filmmakers that watch this channel, and they're going to say, no, I think you should just spend the extra $100 to $200, just get the better setup and be done with it. You're not wrong, but my thoughts is you have to realize what a true beginner is like because you're more advanced. You've already moved past it, or maybe you already had an extensive understanding of what you need. For a beginner who's just starting out to see if this venture even pans out as a career, you need to make sure whatever dollar you spend can be stretched as far as possible. So in which case that extra $100 to $200 could easily pay for like a fifth of your lens in terms of price, just one lens, or it could go to a nice little light like a Godox SL60 or something like that. You need to stretch that dollar. Everything is going to count. If you buy the most expensive thing and after 1 year of learning the technicalities, your craft, understanding how to edit and fix certain things that might arise, like maybe the audio isn't that great, so you have to like, figure out how to EQ it or compression, you have to learn all that stuff, in which case, check out Curtis Judd's channel, this video specifically. He is amazing at teaching this stuff. Please go watch that and support him. Don't ask me how to do it. Just go watch that video. And then you need to understand your own marketing to get clients, work with clients at a cheap price to get stuff on your resume, and then eventually start to up your price, and then hopefully more clients are paying you for the quality you're able to do. That's what a beginner has to go through. As an advanced person, you've already gone past that. So beginner, that's a lot of stuff. That extra $200 or whatever you're going to be spending to go to the road is going to hurt. Because in my opinion, in 1 year, you should try to recoup pretty much your investment into the venture you're going with, and if not, surpassing it. If you're not surpassing it, but you've got your return on investment and you're just slowly cruising along, in which case I would say still stick with the Comica at that point. There's no real reason for you to upgrade if you're just cruising along, making a couple $100 per month, doing what you love with video. But if you suddenly see a sharp increase or a pretty good uptrend in terms of how much income you're making from your video venture, at that point in time, you have the power to say, hey, I need to get a better microphone, I need to get a better light, I need a better lens. What can I do to increase my ability? At that point in time, if you see that uptrend in your income, then you've done it. You understand your marketing, you understand how to shoot technically, you understand the technicalities of your camera. Your ears have been trained to know if the audio is not good enough. Or maybe you're like, hey, I need more battery life on set. This is not going to do anymore. You have enough experience to justify paying the extra $200 or $1,000 for something else. But if you're a pure beginner and you're just going to take someone's word for it, in my opinion, don't do it. Save that extra $100 to $200. Don't go for the road. Learn how to use this until you can't. And when you have extra money coming in, then it makes sense to upgrade. Do I have any more final thoughts on the internal recording? Basically, the Comica does a really great job, very much like the Rode. The internal recording is great. I know some people might say the 16-bit depth is not good enough, in which case I think it is. It's fine for most things. But otherwise, the Rode does give you more compression abilities that you can actually select after the fact, whereas this one's kind of baked in. And I mean, that's really why there's a difference and why I say the Comica is more for the beginner who's literally just starting out versus someone who's more advanced who understands why the Rode makes sense. Because Rode has set themselves on a really nice path, because with their central app, they're updating the firmware. They're giving you additional features that didn't show up in the original release. I don't necessarily think Comica is going to be doing that. I think they're pretty much hard capped at what we got. So anyways, TLDR, Comica, pure beginner. Someone who's more advanced, Rode makes the most sense. And hey, that is it for this week, everybody. If this video has made all the influence in your purchasing decisions, I do have my affiliate links down below. Again, this costs nothing extra to you. It just helps support the channel should you decide to use it. Also have the super thanks turned on if you want to donate there. Otherwise, like always, if you have any questions, comments, just leave it down below. I will get to them as fast as I can. Until then, like, subscribe, and share, and I'll see you guys in the next one. All right, just one transmitter. 1, 2, 3. This is 10 feet away with no line of sight, and this is 10 feet away with line of sight. And 1, 20 feet away with no line of sight, and this is 20 feet away with line of sight. And 1, 2. This is 30 feet away with line of sight. 1, 2, 4. Sight. This is 40 feet away with line of sight. And 1. This is 50 feet away with no. This is 50 feet with line of sight. And of sight, 60 feet with line of sight. And 1, 3. Sight, 70 feet away with line of sight. 1, 2, 3. This is 80 feet with line of sight. And this is 90 feet away with line of sight. 100 feet away with no line of sight. 100 feet with line of sight. Now we'll stay in line of sight. 1, 2, 3, 110, 1, 2, 3, 120, 1, 2, 3, 130, 1, 2, 3, 140, 1, 2, 3, 150. 150 feet away with line of sight. 150 feet away with no line of sight. Let's continue. 1, 2, 3, 160, 1, 2, 170, 1, 2, 3, 180, 1, 2, 3, 190, 1, 2, 3, 200 feet away with line of sight, 200 feet away with no line of sight. Let's finish this off. 1, 2, 3, 210, 1, 2, 3, 220, 1, 2, 3, 230, 1, 2, 3, 240, 1, 2, 3, 250, 1, 2, 3, 260, 1, 2, 3, 270, 1, 2, 3, 280, 1, 2, 3, 290, 1, 2, 3. This is 300 feet away with line of sight. And then this is 300 feet away with no line of sight. Transmitters 1 and 2. And they're both recording internally. And 1, 2, 3. This is 10 feet away with no line of sight. This is 10 feet away with line of sight. 1, 2, 3, 20. This is 20 feet away with no line of sight. And this is 20 feet away with line of sight. 1, 2, 3, 30. This is 30 feet away with no line of sight. 30 feet away with line of sight. 1, 2, 3, 40 feet away with no line of sight. 40 feet away with line of sight. 1, 2, 3, 50. This is 50 feet away with no line of sight. And this is 50 feet with line of sight. And 1, 2, 3, 60. This is 60 feet away with no line of sight. And this is 60 feet away with a line of sight. 1, 2, 3, 70. This is 70 feet away with no line of sight. This is 70 feet away with a line of sight. And 1, 2, 3, 80. And this is 80 feet away with line of sight. Line of sight. This is 90 feet away with line of sight. 2. And this is 100 feet with line of sight. Now line of sight only. 1, 2, 3, 110, 1, 2, 3, 120, 1, 2, 3, 130, 1, 2. That was me swallowing. 140, 1, 2, 3, 150. This is 150 feet away with line of sight. And as I turn around over here, this is 150 feet away with no line of sight. Now let's continue. 1, 2, 3, 160, 1, 2, 3, 170, 1, 2, 3, 180, 1, 2, 3, 190, 1, 2, 3, 200 feet away with line of sight. And then this is 200 feet away with no line of sight. Now let's continue on all the way to 300, 210, 1, 2, 3, 220, 1, 2, 3, 230, 1, 2, 3, 240, 1, 2, 3, 250, 1, 2, 3, 260, 1, 2, 3, 270, 1, 2, 3, 280, 1, 2, 3, 290, 1, 2, 3. This is 300 feet away with line of sight. And then as I turn around here, this is 300 feet away with no line of sight. All right, so this is the final bit, having all 4 transmitters right here. Okay, so that way we see, can you actually use a bunch of these when the 2 receivers are close together in a standard sound audio bag. So here we go. And 1, 2, 3. This is 10 feet away with no line of sight. This is 10 feet away with line of sight. And this is 20 feet away with no line of sight. And this is 20 feet away with line of sight. And 1, 3. This is 30 feet. This is 30 feet away with line of sight. 1, 2, 3, 40. This is 40 feet away